Hello, everyone. My name is Grace, and I'm here today to talk to you about productivity. Um, but first of all, I would like to thank All Day Hey to get this still arranged and making sure that it's still running. It's great to hear that digital industry is still ticking along in this difficult time, and I hope all of you are doing well. I guess just like I am here. So, without further ado, let's have a chat about productivity. But first of all, I'll introduce myself. So, my name is Grace, Zarczynska to be exact, and I am a JavaScript developer at Sky that is in Leeds. My interests also include mountain biking, sourdough baking, obviously JavaScript writing, and houseplants, like this one or that one, and multiple others in that area or somewhere else. If you want to talk to me about what we're talking about today, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Grace_in space, or you can go to my half finished website, which I don't really recommend at the time being. I'm still working on it in my spare time. It's gracejudgingschedule.com. So let's talk productivity. So before I started, I've been working in development for quite a while now, but I have noticed that I'm actually not as fast and productive as I wish I am in comparison to my fellow developers. And leaving imposter syndrome aside, I have found a few things that helped me to deal with that problem. And I found myself very often frustrated with what I've been doing, and I'm, comparing myself to others. And I found that there are things that you can do to minimize the amount of problems you have while you're coding. And my main problem is context switching, and it's when you're going from one thing to another, and then you forget about the first thing, and things become, you lose focus. And some of these tips might be fairly easy or self-explanatory, but every now and then I don't even follow these, and it's worth reminding yourself about small things that you can do to be more productive. First of all, let's talk about clean workspace. So very often you will find yourself that you have lots of apps open at the same time. There's lots of cluttered things running at the same time, and it's quite difficult to deal with that, especially when you're trying to work on things and then there's something pops up, or you get distracted by the image of a beautiful dog or a plant, and that is a bit of a problem. So you can see here before and after on the slides that there is lots of different files open, and obviously the computer has to use more memory, so it takes it slower to do the things that it needs to do. One good tip is to keep all of your projects in one folder, so you can always go to that folder and choose the thing that you need to do. And it's much easier to deal from terminal as well. Another thing to do is to use bookmarks. And bookmarks, especially on your Chrome, for example, or on Firefox or other browsers that you use, making sure that you have all the websites that you use daily at the tip of your finger, and you can use them straight away. Also, keeping tabs on things that you have learned and find very useful very often. So, looking for those things that are useful to you every day, it's always worth keeping them as a bookmark. There are also other tools that you can use to bookmark things, like status in Slack or GitHub. So I have lots of messages people sent me over the time that I find useful for different repositories I work with, and I keep them in my starred Slack messages or all the different GitHub repositories I work on very often. Also, there's also other websites or applications that help you bookmark interesting stuff that you learn, like obviously Medium. And it comes a long way if you keep those things tidy, because finding those things will be much easier if you have them all. It's not necessarily color coded, but like matching things that you're doing. So these are fairly self-explanatory things to do, but I wonder how many of you actually do it. For example, my desktop right now doesn't look as good as it did in the past. So it's good to keep that in mind, that that it's a always work in progress when it comes to that kind of stuff. So when it comes to tools, the first thing to keep in mind is, there's lots of extensions and things that can help you make sure that your code's written in the best possible way. So I use an example as Prettier. It keeps your code tidy. You can install it using an npm package or a VS Code extension. I use VS Code, so that's going to be probably the most used example in most of my tool examples in the coming few minutes. So keeping your code tidy is always a great time saver, not only for you, but also your colleagues, making sure that that the work that you're doing is tidy and readable. And that has a big impact on how you write code. Also, there's other things like bracket matching and like color coding these and other things that can help you with that to make sure that your code is nice and tidy. And I find it that that definitely has a big impact on how you work. So if you don't use Prettier yet, give it a go. You can set it up a project by project basis, or you can set it as a global, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. But keep in mind that if you're working at work, those might differ based on different repositories that you work with. And then another amazing thing to do, which literally blew my mind when I did it the first time, is writing your own recipes for your IDE. So whenever I need to write a test, I would sometimes just go to another test file, grab that test file, copy it, and then delete some of the things inside of it, and then I would start writing my own bits in there, which seems quite time consuming, but considering that you could write it from scratch, it's a little bit faster. But if you could write a snippet, that would do that for you. So a snippet would be like a recipe that you can bring up with writing just a line. And for example, in VS Code, you have to do the Command-Shift-P and configure user snippets. And for example, here is an example. For example, there is a test suite snippet that I use very often. Even obviously, right now I've changed it to it rather than test because it kind of makes more sense semantically. But this is something that I use very often, and this is how it will look like. So it is super fast to do, and you can create your own custom ones, or you can even download a plugin for those things. And for example, in VS Code, so you don't actually have to write your own, but you can find some that you can use, which is a very useful thing. But obviously, depending on where you work, it might be more better for you to actually create those for yourself. And another thing of that kind of similarity is aliasing, and it's a very useful little tool. And since I started using it, it has been a big thing for me. Especially, I used to work with a big repository that has about 20,000 tests, maybe more. But it took it a very long time to run. And apart from that, it also relies on an envar file, but that envar file actually skews the tests. Not great tests in the first place, obviously. But if you don't have time to fix all 20,000 tests, what do you do then? Well, you usually would just rename the envar file and then run the test and then name it back. But if you were doing this manually, obviously it will take a lot of time, and context switching, and that's that amount of work that you have to do, and you get easily distracted. So what I've done instead, I have used aliasing. So on the screen, you can see that you can rename envar file to an envar file, run yarn test, and then rename it back, which is a simple thing, but it definitely changes how you work. So the next thing, obviously, when you have a 10-minute test suite running in the background, it can be quite problematic, especially when you're going to do something else in the meantime, because obviously looking at a screen of tests running one after another for 10 minutes is relatively boring and useless. You can do something else in that time. So if I would be doing that, very often I would find myself actually forgetting I was doing that, which is not a great thing to do. So what I did instead is used a alert script from using an auto script from Mac, which is a small little thing that you can do. I'm very happy to share that snippet with you later. And what it does is adding that alert at the end of my test suite would send me an alert and actually ping me at the same time so I can actually hear it, because seeing it sometimes it's not enough. And I would be able to go back to the thing that I was doing and actually check how the tests were running. So it would allow me to actually focus back on the work that I was doing. So it's a great little feature that I would definitely recommend if you have a very long tasks running in the background of your development. So cool, that's a few things to have it keep in mind. And all of those things really are automation. And obviously you can go a little bit further with all of those automated tasks. So if you have any repetitive tasks that you do day by day basis, what you can do is, if you're doing any comparison of data sets, which is something that I do sometimes, if you do something that's very reoccurring and fairly boring, you could definitely have a look at automating this. And the first step to do that would be to create a CLI of some sort. So some of those aliases that I've wrote could be even, within the CLI. You could keep them there as well, and you can run different automated tasks using those, and it will definitely help you making sure that that you do as little of boring stuff as possible. I wonder how many of you actually written a command line interface yourself. If you did, please let me know. I will be very keen to see some of yours. Automation overall is, it's a broad subject, and obviously most of our work is actually automation. We automate people's conversations, we automate people's journeys online, and it's an important part of our job, and it's an important part of our nature. So here is an example that I did it with my work, and it's actually like a side club at work rather than actual work, because we have a coffee club. And we do coffee, which is a fairly easy task to do, obviously, and it involves lots of fun. But if you want to get good coffee, you will then buy it together, get a supplier, and then get brew it every morning with a pretentious V60, obviously. So we usually would get coffee from one place. Actually, it's based in Leeds, and it's North Star. It's really good coffee. And what would happen is we would get an email from them saying, this is how much this is going to cost this month, and we would update a spreadsheet, which is actually quite an automated process itself. And one of us would send out messages to others to make sure that they pay their part of that coffee payment that we have to do. So it was always, a little bit faffy, making sure that everyone's dealing with this. So, the process is fairly simple, it seems. So you check your email, you update the spreadsheet, and you update the members with the amount of money that they have to pay. But actually, when you think about it, this is just simplified version of what you actually do. So there's other things that you do in the meantime. So you open your email. This is the first point of distraction. You can get distracted here because you might get an email or something else. And then you have to remember the number, and then you have to open the spreadsheet to update it. And then when you update the spreadsheet, you have to go and open Slack. This is another great place to get distracted, and then you have to update the members. And after that, you might need to follow up on that because they might have not paid yet. So that's a lot of steps for a very small, simple process. And the spreadsheet itself is quite amazing, and it keeps tabs on everyone literally. And you can keep in mind who's paying, who's in, who's out, and it's very, very good process if you ask me. But there is ways we could improve it. So what we have written is a cron job that uses the Google Mail API, gets to the post box, scrubs the email that you have received from a supplier, and checks for the price of the coffee. And when you do that, using the Google Sheets API, you can go and get the information about the people, obviously update the spreadsheet as well, check who's in, calculate the price, and using the Slack webhooks, go straight into their Slack and say, this is how much you owe, this is how much you have to pay by Monzo. And it makes this process automated, makes it easier. There are others, obviously, you still might need to follow up because some of them still don't pay. But this is like a beginning step of how you can automate your life and all the different things that you can do. Or you could even build a subscription service on its own that you don't even have a spreadsheet whatsoever in the end. But this is, migration process. That's how it works. So if you follow most of these steps, and obviously if you have any great ideas for automating all your projects, that will be very good to hear about these. And obviously that would make you a proper time saver. Not only job will thank you for this, but also your side projects will definitely benefit from that as well. So if I missed anything, please let me know, and I'll be happy to talk to you about this throughout the day. I hope you have a lovely day. Enjoy all day, hey, and thank you very much.